But I mean, yeah, first of all, I mean, it's on the script, but I want to say anyway, thank you for everyone for coming. We don't do this often. I'm not going to lie, it is probably the highlight of my year, getting to come to Birmingham, getting to the Wellington, and just talking about politics for a while, you know, with like-minded people. It's good fun, even though we don't get as many members as we'd like, and, you know, we sometimes get our hopes up about numbers that aren't realistic. I know that a lot of the people who don't attend, who said they would, and people who did say they would attend at all, they're still committed, they're still passionate about the NDP. They're just unable to do it out of time or money. It's completely understandable. Despite how few people we can gather on these occasions, or how many, since we've had 20 or 30 in the past, it is still a really strong testament to the community, I guess I'd say, that we're building around the NDP. We're building around our ideology, around our politics, around ourselves. We're changing lives with our activity. I mean, everyone here, our members, you're all engaging with us on a day-to-day basis, and you're taking our beliefs and you're taking them out into communities, and you're leafleting, and once you've got a base, you're starting to actually make differences, you know, like the parks in Preston. We're making differences to those people who live in those areas, everyday people. We're beginning to demonstrate to them the sincerity and the potency of distributism. And I think as well, although maybe it's not visible just yet, we're going to be having a really strong effect, a really important effect upon vulnerable people, you know, the unborn, the old, the unwell. We're going to be the voice for people who can't speak for themselves in a time where our moral, our supposedly noble government would basically turn these people aside. They don't care about the unborn, they don't care about the old, they don't care about the sick. We're taking a stand for those people when they can't stand for themselves, and we're doing it on a strong, principled basis in the face of a society that basically laughs at us, thinks we're racist or incredibly bigoted, things like that. It's sickening, but at the same time, we should take confidence in one another, we should take pride in ourselves. Over the last year, our membership has remained level, but we have still grown in ways that are less appreciable, but still visible. Behind the scenes, as has been discussed in the other two speeches, but which I didn't know about. I kind of feel like I've been preempted here, like a torpedo. The party leadership, we've pushed on with professionalising and officiating our party, our activities, our image. We're trying to bring about a more reliable, serious image of ourselves, which Tyler touched on. Right now, people don't regard us as a serious pie that they could put their trust and, more importantly, their votes in. We're working to rehabilitate that, so to speak. We've done that by beginning the process to list ourselves as a major party, which will allow us to contest all the levels of the elections, not just the town and parish councils, the district councils, the county councils, but most importantly, we'll be fighting elections in Parliament. I'm not predicting that by 2029 there'll be a national distributist government, or even probably, realistically, a national distributist member of Parliament, but we are on legal footing and probably out in the wider world, social, cultural footing. We're putting ourselves on the same level, the same platform as the big leagues. We're matching the Tories, we're matching Labour, we're matching Reform. We're demanding and establishing for ourselves our own legitimacy. We're telling people who look at our party that we mean what we say, we're sincere, but we're also actually putting in the blood, the sweat, the tears to make it happen, to actually achieve it. We're laying the groundwork for greater efforts through that application and through our struggle, I suppose. We're laying the groundwork for real political battles, which will be a lot more feasible, a lot more realistic, even if they aren't now, once we have built up our activist base, once we have constructed for ourselves electoral strongholds, places where our outreach and our engagement with the community has borne fruit and has convinced people in the area that we are worth voting in, so that they essentially, correlate themselves into a proper voter base. It might not be soon, certainly I don't think before 2029, but if we're pushing up into serious politics, this is what serious political parties do. They construct voter bases and they leverage them to find success. Our activism this year has been down from last year, but it's still steady. We're keeping on with all the staples, you know, the leafleting, the stickering, the litter picking, or to keep our activists from getting a bit too rusty and kind of falling out of the party, as people tend to do when you see nothing for years. But we're also breaking virgin soil in a lot of ways, because we're leading community tree planting, we are organising the online pothole reporting, we're improving parks in areas like Preston, you know, with bird boxes that we installed ourselves this year, but hopefully next year, because we have craftsmen in the party, we'll be manufacturing ourselves. So we are putting our skills and our efforts back into the communities we live in, which is perhaps the most distributist way to live at all. We've done a lot this year, and even if it has been quite quiet for people who aren't militantly involved, who aren't in the executive or don't engage with us in our group chats or on our Discord, we're still kind of tiding ourselves over until momentum picks up again and we can bring those people who perhaps have slightly fallen out of interest with the party back into our activities. Apart from the community engagement that I just mentioned, and which has been mentioned before, we're getting into a lot of very big bureaucratic things on top of the major party application. The big news really is that we are in preliminary discussions with the Populist Party to tie our efforts together, and that may take the form of a political merger, but even if we don't go for that, it would still be an electoral alliance, a membership alliance that would see us essentially double our membership. Both parties would push well past the 100 mark, and we would share with them our strong presences in the northwest and the southwest, and they would share with us their incredibly strong presence in London and the southeast. I've had conversations with Russell White, who is the leader of the Populist Party, and he has also brought to my attention and the attention of the executive of the Belmont Accord, which is effectively a league of distributist parties, all of whom commit to a set of distributist principles. And we're preparing as well to engage them for the same kind of collaboration, an electoral alliance, a membership alliance, perhaps insofar as a merger, or depending on where we can find common ground. They would be a real boon to us because they are people who are of an older generation and as a result have been in politics, passionately fighting the battle that we're taking on for ourselves now for perhaps as many as 40 years, some of them. Some of them are stretching back to the 1980s. So they would very much complement our youthful passion, perhaps our youthful inexperience, with a kind of veterancy that would allow us to really punch above our weight. Even if we don't go so far as signing on with the Belmont Accord, even if we don't, even become an affiliate, we can still communicate with them and share our ideas, and that alone would do a massive amount for the Distributist cause, which at the moment is still in the process of building. We've set in motion an application to the European Christian Political Youth Organisation. They are essentially a pan-European, pro-Christian movement, I guess, of young people, and they're doing a lot of decent work pushing Catholic Christian values around Europe. I think it would be good of us to establish ourselves with them, because we would be pushing the reach of the NDP and the recognition of the NDP beyond our own borders. We'd be pushing it out to an entire generation of young Europeans, and they are more than welcome to support us financially or morally from abroad, and to emulate our push for distributist ideals in their own countries. We've been continuing to professionalise and push out volumes of The Hound, which you'll see on the table behind you, and which also got discussed in the previous speeches. The last one, the one that is set to come out any day now, has been delayed, unfortunately, due to circumstances among the leadership. But going into 2026, we would like to have the hounds set out in an ordered, a rigid fashion in which we see a good size, perhaps as much as a dozen pages, compared to the hound, which right now maybe has 6, 7 or 8. We would see articles from a wider variety of sources. We mentioned Joseph Pearce, a renowned American distributist, but I know that there are other distributists from across Europe, in Portugal, in Spain, in Eastern Europe, who are interested in contributing to some kind of sync of ideology. And we would also commit to a rigid quarterly timetable, so there would be no more confusion or doubt about the publication, the times of publication for our articles, for our volumes. We would be publishing for a year. We would be providing a consistent service to people who are genuinely interested in distributism. We're also looking to digitalize it, which is very important for making it cost effective. We've already mentioned that it's about beginning to draw even, to make its costs back and profit. But if we were able to make it available to perhaps people who are less interested in distributism, but perhaps vaguely interested in the right wing for the cost of perhaps 25 pence, then we would dramatically expand its reach. We might see dozens of readers become hundreds, even thousands, and then that would only amplify as we professionalize the service and continue to bring people in as writers, as editors, and so forth. It would certainly assist us financially in our other efforts like stickering and leafleting. It would be a massive boon to the party. We have also recently, as mentioned before, started a podcast, which isn't actually officially named. We're still just calling it the Hound Podcast. But in this Hound Podcast, we're discussing our party's origins, our party's policies. We're discussing the inspiration that led us to where we stand, distributed literature, distributist thinkers, distributed media. We are hopefully going to host Christian, distributist, nationalist guests who will be able to contribute to that ideological pool and essentially bring additional viewership to our podcasts. I think this perhaps is the most important part of our outreach, because there hasn't been a serious academic space for distributism since the 1930s, when the first Distributist League was founded, when there were incredible names like our founders of Chesterton and Belloc writing and really pushing the ideology, the politics in a serious way. Getting back to that kind of level of seriousness, sincerity, but also productivity, I think would establish our principles and our wider ideology as actually having some merit. I think it's also well timed, because the potential of our ideology to be resurrected from the dead and reimagined to address the world that we have today is boundless, because in many ways the world we have today is incredibly similar to the world we had a century ago. You can even just see that in as simple an example as we have a Pope Leo today, and they had a Pope Leo back then, and the both of them are talking about massive social, cultural revolutions. But it's also important, I think, because the world today is also terrifyingly different from the way it was a century ago. It has completely changed, and without serious academic approaches to the consequences of this development, I think we risk being lost in a mire of materialism, soullessness. The academic development of distributism is a long-term goal of the party, and I think it should be one of our biggest goals. The final big thing for the party on the bureaucratic end is that very soon we are going to officially observe the departure of our now technically former party leader and councillor for Nailsworth, Tyler, who just gave a speech, but since I wrote this speech without having any context, it sounds a bit formulaic. losing anyone, especially Tyler, is going to be a big knock to the party. It's going to be a big change. Tyler has always appeared as the face of the party, and so our branding, I think, our public image is going to take a knock as we are forced to find new public figures to step into that absence. But at the same time, I think it also provides a break with the past and an opportunity for the future. I think that when Tyler eventually returns in a couple of years to rejoin the party, we will hopefully have marked his absence with extreme growth, with public recognition and trust, with electoral success, so that when Tyler comes back to us and many other members join us freshly, we'll be able to make them proud that they come back to a party that is stronger than ever and is doing more good, more sincere good for the British people than ever. For his replacement, I will be taking over in the short term to see out the various bureaucratic projects that I just listed, the possible merger, the European Christian application, the ELCOM, the Electoral Commission, major party application, the Hanged and the Hanged podcast. But I am still committed, while we are a small, manageable fraternity, a very driven, very sincere young men, to holding to the democratic ideal that I think really distinguishes Britain from the rest of the world. As part of that, I would like, once our bureaucratic developments have wound down, perhaps in February or March 2026, to reconvene the whole party, perhaps including the Populist Party, if they have joined us, for our first official annual general meeting as a major party. I'd like to have dozens of our members attend, and I would like to, at that meeting, decide upon an executive that our membership feels will properly represent them and will properly advance national distributism in the form that we, and I say we, but I really mean Matt and Tyler, because they have been fighting this fight way longer than I have, a platform that we can, an executive that we can really do good for you. We can really represent the party, is what I'm saying, the membership. We can actually stand on the principles that we laid out 4 or 5 years ago, that you laid out 4 or 5 years ago, and deliver that to the people. So I'd like to essentially clarify myself by saying that I'd like to hold an AGM early next year to properly confirm perhaps my mandate as leader, or to find a leader for the party that everyone can put their trust in. We have to remain always committed to the British people, that we have the perhaps implausible, but certainly idealistic dream of one day being in governmental charge of. It's been very encouraging in the last few years to see how much Britain has swung to the right wing, and to know that we are not alone in wanting a future for the British people, one that genuinely benefits us, the people who have inhabited this island for literally over 1,000 years. We're more numerous, we're more inspired, we're more driven, and we're more angry than we've ever been before, and it is showing. I think it's showing in the whirlwind of anti-establishment protests that we've seen whip up and down the country recently. Protests like the Bell Hotel protest in Epping and other anti-migration protests. I think it's showing in the political conversations that we have, all of us, with everyday people who are increasingly despondent, and they're increasingly disbelieving in the system that is allowing their cultural and ethnic roots to wither, and for all of their future prospects to disappear. I think that we are in a better position than ever, essentially, to take back from the arrogant profiteers in Westminster who have essentially lied to us for so long, to take back from them our birthright, our country, and to defy them who have ensconced themselves in London and protect themselves rallied around themselves the Metropolitan Police, who continue to this day to bastardise the Pelian principles that for literally two centuries bridge the gap between the government and the people of Britain. I think it is showing this surge in common sense nationalism in the strength of political parties like Reform, who I would be the first to admit I don't think are the solution, the final solution for our politics, but who are increasingly driving people into the arms of nationalism, for distributism. I think it's also showing in the popularity and increasing acceptance of not just individual figures, but entire political stances that only a decade ago, perhaps even only 5 years ago, would have been tantamount to heresy against a globalist religion. I think we are overall gaining massive ground in someone said it earlier at this conference, the cultural struggle, the total war that is being waged against everything that we have ever founded our country upon, everything the West as a whole has ever founded themselves upon. I think it's important to realise this as well. We cannot, the NDP, but also just individual members, allow ourselves to stand at the back of the room while others undertake what is quite clearly to us a momentous struggle. We have to understand that as a country, as a people, as a culture, we are rapidly approaching an event horizon beyond which we might never recognise the Britain that once existed ever again. It just won't exist. It will just disappear one day, and no matter how well we remember it and how hard we try to bring it back, it will just be an impossibility. I think it's somewhat evocative of a historical analogy that I recently learned about, which was that during the last days of Rome, the last few decades of the city's civilization, the city's existence as part of the old empire, true Romans walked the streets of the Via Sacra and simply wondered to themselves how the civilization that they had built over the course of 1,000 years had just simply disappeared before their very eyes. You know, completely incomparable in its cultural, its political, its military, its economic reach, and it had simply evaporated over the course of a few decades that had simply gone unnoticed by its people. If we want to keep Britain, which I think is perhaps equal to Rome in its contemporary context, in terms of culture, in terms of political outreach, in terms of diplomacy, then it means that as individuals and as a party, we need to fight like hell to keep it alive. We have to sweat, we have to cry, we have to bleed, and we have to die. We have to accept no less, and we have to want so much more, because for us, this is everything. We have to recognise that the stakes have never been higher, and we have to be completely prepared to play at a game that we might very well lose. But as little as we are now, I think the main thing for us, given our relatively small reach, is that we just have to not give up. We have to keep doing everything that we've done before, and we have to not lose hope, and we have to do it more, and we have to do it better. I don't want to inspire any pessimism or optimism particularly. I'm not taking a stance either way, but I think the truth is as much the truth as it is just very simple. I think that what we cannot dream, we cannot try. What we cannot try, we cannot do. What we cannot do today, we can't always start tomorrow. I look forward to serving as your party leader for however long I am democratically charged to hold that honour, and I do intend to stand for a proper confirmation of my position, which I said earlier. But for now, I'd like to thank you for listening, and God bless.